And we're back on We the People. I'm your boy Richard Fowler, along with the one and only Carmen Berkeley, also known as DJ Spindiego. See, Carmen, do you like the DJ Spindiego name, or do you like the Carmen? Which one or do you like both of them? It depends what type of day you're at.
It depends on what job I'm at. Okay, that's why it depends on who's paying me. But I just go by Carmen. You can call me Spindiego. You know what I'm saying?
Love it. So Carmen, let's listen to Michelle Obama really sort of dig deep on what it means to sort of have low-level depression during this pandemic.
I know that I am dealing with some form of low-grade depression, not just because of the quarantine, but because of the racial strife and just seeing this administration, watching the hypocrisy of it day in and day out is dispiriting. Waking up to yet another story of a Black person somehow being dehumanized or killed or falsely accused of something, it is exhausting. It has led to a weight that I haven't felt in my life in a while.
Carmen, I want to know from you, before we introduce Claudia, who's our guest for the show, how is it like, so I have a therapist, I will acknowledge that, right? And full disclosure, Claudia is my therapist, but do you have a therapist, and how has the therapist hunt sort of gone for you?
I do not have a therapist. I definitely need a therapist. I went to one when I was in DC, loved her. And to be honest, in my transition from DC to Washington State, it has not been my top priority, but now that I'm wrestled and I'm settled, I know I need somebody to talk through these things with.
I love it. So let's unpack that. To unpack that, joining us is the one and only Claudia Cauterucci. Just a little bit about her. She has a master's in clinical psychology. She's a licensed clinical therapist, certified group therapist, and holistic health counselor. Her outpatient practice, her psychotherapy outpatient practice works with adults, couples, and groups since 1999. She has a love, a passion, and a heart for helping folks get their mental health together, especially if you are a person of color or you're part of the LGBTQIA community. Claudia, welcome to the discussion on We the People.
Yes, hey everyone, I'm Claudia Cauterucci. I am bicultural, bilingual. I think that's really important for folks because even in the Latino community, so I do therapy in Spanish, which is really, really important. And just like it, people of color have all sorts of taboos around therapy, although that's changing. That is changing.
So I guess my first question to you, Claudia, as we sort of begin this discussion in 2021, as folks are trying to get, as Carmen said at the top of the show, mo better in their life, and therapy is part of that. And I just really would love for you. You came in, you heard Carmen sort of say she's in the hunt for a therapist. What is your biggest piece of advice to Carmen, somebody who's looking for one actually in this moment?
For sure. So Carmen, first thing is word of mouth, right? And really, really word of mouth, right? Because people will say, I love my therapist and this is why. Now that requires a little vulnerability on your part, right? Because you're going to say, I'm needing a therapist, but it's almost like 12-step groups. They're in it, you're in it, you get the language, and they can describe why this therapist feels really good to them. So that really is the first one. The second one is for people of color in particular, there's a place called Therapy Den. Black, Latino, Asian, LGBTQ Therapy Den is just one of my favorite places. I'm on there, people I respect. Places like Psychology Today or LinkedIn, you guys, I have a lot of great colleagues who are on there. I'm not on those. I am in Therapy Den. But those are good sources because you could actually shoot a little message to people and say, hey, and you can read their bio. I have two more. The other one is your health insurance provider, because we really want to talk about like how much therapy costs. And not everyone can afford therapy. This is like a heart mission for me. So your insurance provider has a manual that's this big and it's very cumbersome and overwhelming. So this is what I tell people to do if you need a copay, okay? Go through it. Just take an hour with a cup of coffee, go through it and make a short list about 5 people. Okay. And I am happy to make myself available. I help people just say, out of these 5, these 3 people look great. Call them and feel them out, because we know we got to feel people, right? We've got to really feel the match with people. And lastly, if you can't afford therapy, this is important because there's a bunch of people who can. There's so many great resources online. My YouTube channel, I actually list topics, relationships, sex, breakups, meditation on purpose. Okay, on purpose. So you can do some self-knowledge, at least while you wait, at least while you save for therapy. But get it going. Get your internal investigation going, right, Carmen? So if you're really busy, just at night, right, with your green tea, watch a video on being an empath, watch a video on relationships, watch a video on anxiety, right? Just start your investigation, your self-investigation. Is that helpful?
Of course it's helpful. And I love that you are, you know, the approach that you said is we're already scrolling anyway. So let's actually go and find a couple of, instead of just scrolling the gram, why don't we watch something that's going to help with what we're actually struggling with? And, you know, I think, Claudia, I really appreciated what you said about being vulnerable and asking other people, because, you know, one thing I feel like I'm always struggling with is I got to have a connection with somebody. Like I can't just tell everybody all my secrets. So for, you know,
I'm
so
thinking
true.
I'm thinking of the Alicia Keys song when you said that. It's like, I won't tell.
I'm like, that's my personal business. But, you know, Claudia, I think one thing I struggled with before when I was in therapy is how do you go into a new conversation with a therapist? Because like I had gone in with all these things I wanted to talk about, and she was like, let me actually ask you like 3 or 4 questions. So how does one prepare when they're talking to a new person?
Such a great question. But let me just point out something you said earlier that's really important. Study after studies after studies after studies have shown that it's not so much the theoretical perspective. For example, I'm a psychodynamic, holistic psychotherapy. It doesn't matter the theoretical approach. It matters. What's most healing is the connection you make with your therapist, Carmen. And so what you're saying is right on the money. That's really what turbocharges healing and getting better. Okay, so that's across the board. It doesn't matter. Okay, so what I like to do, people will come in with their cover story, what I call the cover story, the story above everything else. Like, I just had a breakup, I'm in the middle of a divorce, I'm in the middle of a move, I hate my boss, whatever, or I'm waking up at 4 a.m. anxious, right? And so bring what I call like your burning issue. And the way I like to say it with people who have like 6 things they want to talk about in their first session, I say, what is it that you don't want to leave today without me knowing? Right? What's the one thing you want me to know today? The other thing is, and because what I call sort of party one thinking, remember that they're the expert, right? We're trained to look at you, to see if you're fidgeting, to see if there's tears in your eyes around a certain thing you're talking about. So we're there to ask you questions. You don't have to do all the work, okay? But for you, just be like, okay, I want to make sure that this is what this person knows about me in my first session. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
okay.
really, I started welling up just listening to you talk.
But you know, well, Claudia, you said something that was really sort of rich that I don't want to sort of speed bump over, right? And I want to let that live for a second. As you said, you know, you don't have to do all the work. And going back to the conversation that we were having at the top of the show about the millennial generation and just exactly how much trauma we've been through. And in much of that trauma, we have sort of been left to do as a generation to do all the work. right? We are burdened down with student loan debt, and every other generation's like, yeah, whatever, and we're left to do the work, right? You know, we were the generation that grew up through 9/11, and nobody sort of said, let's sit down and talk to what that feeling of fear that you have from two planes going into a building. Nobody came to our to young millennials and as high schoolers and said, let's talk about this, because what we were left to do all the work. And then even as people, as Black people and LGBTQIA people, with the trauma that we see sort of happening in our community, whether it be the murder of transgendered women of color, whether it be the sort of the discrimination to the LGBTQIA community, whether it be the constant, persistent, excessive use of police force, once again, we have been left to do all the work. And when I think what makes this so rich, and as folks sort of look for therapists and look for getting the mental help they need, it's worth noting that you are not, this is the one thing that you are not supposed to do all the work. And so I just think that's such a rich nugget there that we don't think about, because as you said, Carmen, just listening to you as somebody who's gone through it, I think I'm so happy. And to be very fair, so the audience knows, when we started planning this episode and we started to dig deep, we didn't know that Carmen was in the hunt for a therapist. So this made for perfect.
We're talking to you. We're talking to you.
Right, but Richard, there's something about that.
Let me just add really quickly to what you're saying. One of the therapy issues, especially for people of color, and imagine for LGBTQ, is this constant sense of I'm alone, right? Since the age of 4 or 5, right? You're underneath your covers in the room and you're having to figure it out all by yourself, and you don't understand so many things. Maybe you're even what they call a parentified child, which is you're the caretaker of your parents. A lot of you are out there, okay? A lot of you are out there. You're the one who like had it together, right? But you were little. You were little. This is one of the therapy issues. So one of the experiences of going into therapy is to slowly trust that you can take what you've been thinking about, wrestling with, being anxious about, to someone else. And Richard knows this, that I describe myself as a partner therapist, partner, who's going to partner you, right? As you're asking, as you're sifting, as you're afraid to go into some places, because it's very likely that when you were younger, you were doing a lot of that by yourself. Right? So trust, they're there to be with you. That's our deal. That's our jam.
Claudia, how has your practice, or even just the practice of supporting folks, changed in COVID?
What I've really seen, isn't it interesting? Definitely people have talked about sort of the rise in anxiety, right? Massive fear, depression because of isolation, having all of your escapes taken away from outside. Right. But let me tell you, Carmen, what I've really identified. COVID reactivated childhood trauma. For me, that is the pulse that I have been on. And I felt it myself. I felt feelings of feeling unprotected, of not knowing the future. But we just talked about feeling alone as children, right? COVID has so reactivated trauma. There's a lot of narcissistic, empathic relationships, the experience of sort of an abuser in the midst, right? Whether
definitely,
right? This feeling, exactly, right? You're getting me. So it's actually not, it's not just normal anxiety or depression for all the normals, isolation, being at home with your family, having to juggle kids and work and all of that. All of that is there, right? And it's sort of, it's expected. But this deep reactivation of childhood trauma, it has been so intense. And I've really loved putting language to that so that people know what's happening to them, right? So that people are aware, like, you're getting reactivated, you're getting highly triggered, And Richard knows that we say thank you to the triggers, because it allows us to start doing some massive cleanup around what's getting triggered. Yeah.
I love that. Now, Claudia, how if folks can't find a therapist of color, and I think that there is, as Carmen said, there's a level of trust that you want to build, and I think in the current environment, having another person that looks like you or that might love like you can be the world of difference. And like you said at the top, making that connection, right? So if you can't find a therapist of color who would be a good fit, should folks settle, or should they sort of figure out a way to do telemedicine now that we're sort of in this new COVID environment where telemedicine has become more popular? So how do folks navigate that? Like if you live now, Carmen just moved to Seattle, for example, right? And there's so many folks who live in areas where there's not a lot of people of color to begin with, and they want to find a therapist of color. And if there's not one down the street or around the corner, how do they find one, and how do they adapt to the fact that they might never see their therapist in front of their face? Like their therapist is always sort of via Zoom.
Right. Very good. Very, very good question. So number one, remember, never settle. Never settle. Just across the board on relationships. Just don't do it, right? You're about to engage in a really vulnerable, deep relationship with someone. Okay. You're about to show yourself. So ask questions, right? Like you would on a serious date with someone. Ask questions. For example, some people don't know that I'm Latina, right? So, and they need to ask me, what is my experience with people of color? What is my own experience? Ask them, right? So let's say they're not someone of color. You ask them, what is your experience? What do you believe? Like, so I'm going to reveal parts of myself that are specifically about being someone of color or LGBTQ. What do you know about this? What do you understand about it? Okay, number one. Number two, and this is something I really, really wanted to emphasize. And it's personal, but it's also professional for me. Ask your therapist, Carmen, ask your new person, even if it's by teletherapy, have you done therapy yourself? Now, whether
That was an aha moment.
please,
What's
I
the
am
work you
telling
doing?
you, from a therapist, it's like going to a personal trainer who doesn't work out.
Okay.
Because people who have dug deep into themselves, who know their wounds, who know their shame, who know their loves, right, can connect with you, whatever color, whatever gender, whatever you're here, right? But if they know how to do this internal process, and I say to everyone, I say to ask your therapist, have you done therapy yourself? What is your experience with therapy? Right? It's a sort of, I can't tell you how many therapists haven't done therapy. You want them to be educated, yes, but you want to be self-educated, right?
That's right.
Because those are the real deep points of connection you can make with someone.
Okay, this is my final question. So you said something about like almost a date.
Yes.
So, let's just say I find somebody and I'm like, okay, they cool. But I want to maybe try out another person. Would you recommend in, just like the final decision making, maybe talking to 2 or 3 people, or like if you just make that immediate connection, just go with the first person that you find?
Absolutely. What a great question. And I have to ethically say, of course, you're not going to date your therapist.
Of
right?
course. No. Yeah, no. That sounds like a movie.
That was in the realm of like, don't settle. When you go do a real relationship, don't settle, right? Like really, really don't settle. So exactly. If you feel, oh, this is a match, I just clicked in, right? Which is what you want to feel in life. You want to feel like this, I just clicked in here. This gave me the goosebumps. I feel heard and seen. You continue, right? So I always say, listen, give it at least 3 sessions where you're like, okay, if it's like, I'll give this some time, definitely interview other people. Definitely. You interview. Because as you said, Carmen, you're going to be opening up. And listen, don't waste your money. Open up.
Right. Because a lot of money. Yeah.
Don't waste your money. really do your work, right? Do it. So yes, take it seriously. Just think about it. I want to talk to you. I want to see how I feel with you. I want to see if it's a match for me.
I love it. Well, Claudia is joining us for the next episode as well. So you'll see Claudia on more and more episodes of We the People. We want to thank you so much for joining us here as we had our first 2021 conversation in equipping people with tools to do what they've got to do. Carmen, what are some of your takeaways?
At least for me, I heard that there are actual resources for Black folks or people of color to go to, specifically Therapy Den. We can also find folks on LinkedIn, which I really appreciate. If you are on your journey towards finding a therapist, you can also use a lot of the online tools that exist, like videos. And I, at least for me, what I really took away from here is that it is okay to take your time to identify someone that you have a close connection to, because we are encouraged. The whole purpose is to encourage you to not have to hold on to that, but to share with someone else to work through it. So I love that.
I love that. And I think what I would add is, and I think the one thing that I took away is that you don't have to do all the work, which is the biggest aha moment of, all of this. So Claudia, how can folks find out more about your practice, more about what you do, and get in contact if they might have made a connection to you already in our brief conversation? How do they get connected to you?
Well, my website, Cauterucci.com. But really what I really want to offer you is my YouTube channel as well, because I've actually customized it. I have all of my own meditations. I have step-by-step processes. So if you can't afford therapy, there's ways that I lead you through step-by-step processes where you can do on your own for what I call the 4 a.m. wake-ups, right? We all have the 4 a.m. wake-ups. So my YouTube channel is, I'm not sure, are we gonna link or?
We'll have a link. We'll have a link here, but I want to say, let's see if I remember, youtube.com/DY meditation. If folks want to find out more information.
Exactly. Did meditation, dynamic meditation.
Well, we want to thank everybody for joining us on this episode of We the People. As always, me and Carmen believe in the whole person. If you could be We the People, which is why we did this episode, and you'll see us on another one of these We the People specials around getting your mental health in check. This is Richard Fowler, and the one and only Miss Carmen
Berkeley. We'll see you all next time.
We'll see you next time.